Good evening again, everybody. So we're back working on our planer stand. I got a little The wind's been really bad. I can feel where every little air infiltration in here is. So we spent most of the evening tonight getting insulation along this this western facing lower end of the gambrel roof. So we had a lot of air penetration in there. Have to do the filler pieces on top. Did a lot of spray foaming. I told you I wasn't going to bore you with any more insulation videos, so we're not. But tonight it's going to be a short one. And I apologize for the shortness of it, but want to keep you guys going with the project. As I get something done, you guys get to see it. So you're always a day behind what I'm doing. But anyway, so if you're looking to learn timber framing or any kind of mortise and tenon joinery, anything that goes together that way, it's really good to have projects that you can small projects that you can kind of start out on. Because believe it or not, I find that the smaller stuff is harder to do than the big stuff. The smaller stuff shows a mistake a lot more than what your bigger stuff does. So say I have a minor mistake on like one of those 10 by 16 tie beams where we have a 4-foot long scarf joint. 1/16 of an inch isn't going to show that much. But when you're getting into smaller stuff like this, that little mistake is going to show up big and you're going to know it. So it's the same process as you would be to lay out any timber framing joints or any kind of furniture joints, anything like that. When you're doing fine woodworking or anything like that, you're still picking out reference sides, you're still picking out adjacent faces. All the same practices apply. That's what's kind of neat about timber framing is you're using fine furniture building practices to build your timber frame. So what we're going to do, I always start off squaring off an end. I don't like to trim it though until I have it laid out. That way if I have any weird spots or anything like that, it's easy enough for me to take care of those before it becomes an issue. So usually I'll start back a couple inches from an end so I have plenty of room to trim it square, and then I just start laying stuff out. So I have 4 legs up here. Of course, the one that we found the busted off screw in. You can tell I've used this for other stuff, but it'll be a dandy planer stale leg. We'll hide the cuts where it's not going to be quite so noticeable. Same rule applies when you're doing this. You want your best faces towards the outside of whatever it is you're making. So say you're making a kitchen table, you have 4 legs to do, and you've got 2 corners that are just beautifully, perfectly square to each other all the way down. You want those towards the outside of the piece. It's going to be it's your best foot forward. Same way with something like this, same way with timber framing, yada yada. So anyway, another thing I can tell you is never trust that your combination square. Don't adjust this without checking for square afterwards. I can't tell you how many times over the years I've adjusted my combination square and it wasn't quite square. I've had to tweak it a little bit, and you don't want to find out the hard way. So I always just take a square that I know is good and square, and I always just test that out. It's quick, it's easy, it lets you know you're on the right track. So anyway, we're going to move your camera up a little bit closer so you guys can see exactly what I'm doing. We're going to see what we have for length here that we can work with so we can kind of get an idea what our finished height is going to be. I like a certain height, but for a planer, it's not like I'm going to be bent over it all day. But I still want it at a comfortable working height for me. That's the thing when you're doing plans and stuff like that for workbenches and things like that. I never kind of follow plans that I see other people have made, and that's mostly because everybody's different sizes. Everybody has things that are more comfortable for them to work with and less comfortable. So I like to go with what's more comfortable for me, and I'm tall, so that little bit of bending over, that kills your back. And I have enough aches and pains nowadays to where I don't need my back with it. We've been down that road too many times. So anyway, enough of me yakking. Let's get at it, and we'll start doing some measuring. We'll start doing some laying out. Let's hope this thing can stay in focus. Sometimes I don't catch it until I'm editing, and that can be a real nuisance. So all I'm going to start off by doing is we're going to square everything. Let's make sure I start it right here. We're going to square everything off of this Eris. which for us it's going to be right here. Some people do this different. I always darken in the triangle at the adjacent face and leave it open at the reference face. So just like the timber framing, I want to carry my lines down. Because I know this corner here is good and square, and these actually came out pretty good out of the planer and everything. Tell you what, it's a lot easier hustling these around than big timbers, I can tell you that. And the same thing goes for this as it does for timbers. You don't just take your square and set it across there. Because if you're off a little bit, it's going to show in your work, and that is off a little bit. Of course, I just bumped this, so let's check it again. So I connect the lines without holding the square on there. Same rule applies for big timbers. Move this back. And the other thing, when you're laying these all out, lay them out in the same direction. All your pieces that you want to work on, lay them out so your reference faces and everything's in the same direction, because that way, if you're going to make a mistake, it's a little easier to pick it out. It's a little easier to keep from making a mistake, I guess is a better way of putting it. And I'm just kind of arbitrarily here picking a spot. Cool. I hate when that happens. Now the other thing that's worth mentioning, I won't touch the bottoms of these legs until I know that until I know these fit perfectly into the top stretchers. Because if I'm off a little bit on one of these cuts, I need to be able to have room to make my adjustments. And if I cut all these to the same length and I go to put it together and something didn't fit right, I have no recourse but to lower every single leg. If I do it before I trim them down, I can trim the legs down to the height I want after all this is already fit and put together. That's kind of how I do it. Doesn't mean you have to. This isn't Gestapo woodworking or the Gestapo channel. Just me bullshitting at you just about every night. It's good for you. Now, some people like to put their pencil down and then move the square to it. I've always done the opposite because that's just what I do. It's probably a little more accurate the way they do it. Okay, again, we'll flip them up and we'll connect the bottom lines without laying the square on it. Or without putting the square edge on it. You guys know what I'm saying. Check you guys again. Geez, our pieces are moving down the bench. Take my 2 millionth sip of coffee today. Alright, where are we? Right through a damn knot. You guys, Must be bad luck for me, because ever since I've started this channel, I've had at least one joint in every freaking thing I've cut in a knot somewhere. That's alright on this one though, because that knot will be gone by the time we cut these tenons off. I tell you, a channel you guys might like, and he's doing some really cool stuff. He just built a gorgeous treadle lathe. His lasting build. He's got about 1,800 viewers last I checked. His name is Jim. Something about guys named Jim with decent channels, I guess. You guys might like some of the stuff he's into. He's doing some really nice work. And he's working hard trying to get that channel out there. And I tell you what, I can tell you that's not an easy task. Not an easy task at all. All right. Once again, now that I've got my tenon height in there, we've got it marked all the way around. You guys are going to get sick of hearing this. I'm going to put these back. Put these back to where I had them. I do this just because I find it really helps me not make so many mistakes. I mean, I make plenty of mistakes. And you guys usually get to see them when I do. But this really helps me avoid making those mistakes. If I have, when I'm able to do the same process through it all, it's a big help. It's a really big help. So anyway, let's get on to laying out the cheeks of our tenon. We've got the shoulders laid out, let's get the cheeks laid out, and then we can start cutting and hacking. Alright, let's lay these tenons out. Again, I'll keep you in the camera as best as I can. So, same rules apply to this. I could center my tenon, but I believe what I'm going to do, I'm going to cheat, I'm going to do it the easy way. So, rule of thumb, tenons are a quarter of this guy right here. So, if you have 4 inches, you want a 1-inch tenon. So this is a little bit under 4 inches, but we're still going to go with the 1-inch tenon. Little cheat tool here. This is exactly 1 inch. I always double check them though. Well. And the reason I like to do that, because if I just let the tools do the layout for me, it takes the human error right out of it. I mean, it gets rid of it. So we're going to X off our waist. Notice I screwed myself with the lighting. Okay, just going to label that tenon so I know not to cut it. I know it's upside down for you guys. Now you could at this time knife your lines, but I'm not going to do that until I have it all laid out, just in case I monkey something up. But since we're going to measure this bottom off of our adjacent face, which is our face that is square to our reference face, we'll do the same thing. Make sure that's nice and flush. Now remember, you're going to have a pencil width line And you're going to move it. Wood's too smooth. Now when we do this, I am going to leave the line when we cut it. And we're going to pare everything down. Now, there is our 1-inch tenon on the bottom, or on the back side, or whatever the hell you want to call it. X this out. I just do one big one so I know not to cut all the way through it. Okay. So there's one. Tell you what, I just did not realize how late it was getting. I got into insulating this wall so much tonight that, or that roof, that I kind of ran myself out of time. So anyway, another daily update of what's going on in the shop. We have our tenons laid out. We have our tenon ends cut down, trimmed, ready to start kerfing for the tenons. I tell you, it's going to be nice getting the. And I had Elrod, one of our viewers, commented earlier on how much nicer a table saw is and how he doesn't use his radial arm saw anymore. Pretty much was it Elrod? I think it was Elrod. I could be wrong. Pretty sure it was you, Elrod. But anyway, he's talking about how he doesn't use his radial arm saw anymore. It got to a point where he stopped using it. He ended up using, he's got a unisaw. That's what he does all his major cutting on. And that's great. You know, if a radial arm saw can be a bit of a boat anchor in a shop if you're not using it. It takes up a lot of real estate. You end up using a lot of wall space to accommodate for one. But here's the deal. For stuff like this, and I'm talking for my purposes, not for everybody else. This is just me talking my preferences. For stuff like this, I could much more accurately lay that on the radial arm saw. It's got a 12-inch blade on it, and I can cut these perfectly every time the first time. Using a big saw like that, especially if you're trying to do a finer cut, it probably would have been better served if I went downstairs and got the 10 1/4-inch circular saw. That might have worked a lot better. This wasn't too bad, mind you, but it's a little bit harder to control than a standard circular saw by a lot. But anyway, really looking forward to have that set up. I cut a few braces for this barn on that radial arm saw, and it just worked beautifully. It worked really nicely. So anyway, you guys want to see the installation, see what we got done there? Told you I wouldn't do this again, but why not? You know, it's progress. Everybody likes to see progress. I get the light turned around here. Hey, look at that. Okay, we're going to jiggle you guys just a little bit. Take this off the tripod. Anyway, that's where we're at with the insulation. we've got to get up there yet. Walk you around. And might be hard to see, but we got all the way down, at least for the first ones. Again, the wood stove's always running these days. I'm running out of wood scraps in the shop, I'll tell you that. So, we've got some insulating left to do up there the last couple feet. So I even spray foamed it. I followed a lot of your suggestions and cut those panels about a half an inch less than what they needed to be for width-wise. Much better hold with the spray foam in there. I'm much happier with that. And because what I'm finding, the spray foam is expanding on both sides, so that's going to wedge it right in there nice. So that's what kept us from the main project so much. But I had wind blowing right up the crack of my ass out of those eaves right there, even with the boards on there. Of course, they weren't really a tight seal. It's just the way they are. But by the time we get done insulating this thing, we get the batt insulation in these, this should be a pretty nice warm building. So anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see how far we can get tomorrow night.